Who can separate us, or who shall separate us from the love of Christ? Shall tribulation or distress or persecution or famine or nakedness or peril or sword? As it is written, for thy sake we are killed all the day long. We are accounted as sheep for the slaughter. But no. In all these things we are more than conquerors through him that loved us. I've shared this with some of you before, and I'll close with this illustration. But what is more than a conqueror? You know, I'll explain what more than a conqueror is. I use the illustration of many of you have seen the Rocky movies. 4 of us as well. And the Rocky movies, you know, they build all up to this fight at the end, and then Rocky gets in to face his biggest opponent. And his biggest opponent has been training just as much as Rocky has. And then they get in and they go to the bout, and they end up, you know, beating the daylights. There's blood everywhere. I mean, it's grotesque. And you get to the very last round, and Rocky's been knocked down several times. You know the narrative. And then, you know, he busted and bruised, and he gets up, and in the last few seconds he gets this supernatural strength, and he beats the tar out of his opponent, knocks him out, and they lift him up, and you know, everybody's excited, and we're all going buck mad on the television thinking, come on, Rocky. We're even shouting at the TV. I know in our house they were. I mean, oh, goodness sakes, there's a movie. Anyway, same narrative, but same principle. Jesus went and trained for a bout to take on our enemy that had held us in slavery and in bondage of sin. And he engaged them in a bout and a fight for our freedom. And that's what he was fighting for. That's what was on the ticket. And of course, he runs the whole thing through Calvary and the underworld and the resurrection. You know the whole story. And he defeats Satan. He comes up triumphant out of it. And so we can understand the narrative. So go back to the Rocky thing. So he gets off the platform and he's busted. His 2 eyes are closed. He's looking through 2 slits. They have to you know, cut the swelling to let the fluid out. And he talks real stupid as well. And so even that leans into it. And his hands are all anyway. And so he's in the dressing room, and they congratulate him, and he's the champion of the world. And then they hand him a check for $10 million. I don't know what McGregor got for fighting the other fella, Holyfield. I know it was in the millions, but nonetheless. So they hand him a check, and they stick it in his pocket and say, there you go, you're the world champion, there's $10 million. That's your purse. And so it's in his own hometown. So anyway, he hasn't seen his family in 6 months because he was off training, as you know the whole story. And he jumps into the car and he drives to the outskirts of the city. And he arrives home, and as the lights shine up on the window of the home, his wife is waiting inside. She didn't watch the fight. She didn't want to watch it. She didn't want to see it. She couldn't take it. And she sees the lights light up the room. She runs out to the front door and opens the front door, and he gets out of the car. And as he gets out of the car, she runs to meet him at the door, and she throws her arms around him, and he picks her up because she's only, 5 foot nothing, and she weighs 110 pounds, and he picks her up in his big, strong arms, and she embraces him, and she holds him, and she feels the strength of his embrace. And she looks at him, and he's all beat up, but he conquered. He won. He triumphed. He's the champion of the world. And he puts her down, and he reaches into his pocket, and he takes out a check for $10 million, and he hands it to her. And as soon as she grabs it, she becomes more than a conqueror. Does that make sense? Let me tell you what Jesus did for us. Was he won us a victory. I don't have to fight for that victory. I don't have to go into that ring and fight that fight to gain the prize. When Jesus came up triumphant and sat at the right hand of the Father, whosoever came and believed on him, he handed me the check and made me more than a conqueror. I don't have to fight the devil. The Bible says I fight a good fight of faith in 1 Timothy 6. The Bible says resist the devil. I don't have to fight the devil. He's already defeated. We wrestle not against flesh and blood. I'm enforcing his defeat. Because I'm more than a conqueror. I've been handed the victory. I've got to now live out of that victory. And this is what victorious faith is. It is the ability to understand what's been given, what's been won, what you've received, and you have the boldness to live in that reality. You have the boldness and the confidence to live as more than a conqueror. It's victorious faith. And we will take it up again next week. Is that okay?